Hello, and welcome back to Mercom's online training for the QX Mini Series panel. This module will start with an overview of all the different circuit boards, their connections, and the jumper locations and functions. Once we have reviewed all the different connections, we will go over the point-to-point wiring. Much like the first module, you will be tested at the end of the presentation, at which point, if you obtain an 80% or greater on the test, you can move on to the next training module, which will introduce you to the MGC audio configurator and basic programming of the QX Mini audio system. Let us start with the QX Mini Master and the QX Mini Booster panel, as their main circuit boards are the same. On the upper left-hand corner of the board, you will notice a terminal block with the label aux audio. At this point in time, this connector does not have any use and will be used for a future enhancement of the system. To the right, you will see RMic audio, which will be the audio input from the QX Mini remote microphone or the QX Mini local operating console. If we keep going, there are two relay inputs that can be connected to a UL or ULC listed fire alarm panel to turn on output zones, messages, or tones on the QX Mini panel. The QX Mini Master and Booster circuit boards come equipped with a common alarm, AC trouble, and common trouble contacts that can be monitored by either a fire alarm panel or security panel to ensure that the panel is functioning at all times. Moving on, we come across three RS-45 connections. The RMic RS-45 terminal is where you will wire the RS-45 connection between the QX Mini remote microphone and the QX Mini local operating console. All remote microphones and LOCs will be daisy chained together and then back to the master panel. The remote mic RS-45 connection has no use on the booster panel. Please remember that the QX Mini master panel can support up to 6 remote microphones or LOCs or a combination of both. The RS-45 in and out are used to network the QX Mini master panel and the QX Mini booster panel. The RS-45 is the connection that will pass on information to turn on output zones as well as messages and tones to each of the booster panels. It will also transmit audio when personnel use the microphone in an emergency situation. The aux24V terminal is a 24-volt source that will supply both the QX Mini RM remote microphone and the QX Mini LOC local operating console. The SLC loop is where you'll connect the SLC loop of a compatible Mercom fire alarm panel using the CLIP protocol such as the FX3500, the FX2000, FlexNet, and Pro2000. By connecting to a compatible Mercom fire alarm panel, you can turn on output zones, messages and tones on the QX Mini audio system from the fire alarm panel, as well as monitor any troubles on the QX Mini system over the SLC loop. All of these monitor and input zones are programmable using the MGC ECS configurator. Sync input 1 and 2 can be used in two ways. The sync inputs can be programmed to turn on output zones, messages and tones, much like the relay input mentioned earlier. The other use would be to provide sync so that it can follow another fire alarm panel, the master panel, or an external sync module. If you wish to pass on sync from a QX Mini master or booster panel, you can do so by using the sync output connection. The last two terminals located at the top right of the QX Mini main PCB board are the two onboard NAC circuits that are used for horns and strobes. Each of the NAC outputs are rated for 2.5 amps with a total of 5 amps per panel and 30 amps per system. Making our way to the bottom right of the QX Mini main PCB board, you'll see the connectors for the transformer, which are rated for 29 volts AC. On the board, they will be labeled P1 and P2. This connection is not polarity sensitive as the voltage is alternating current and is converted into DC or direct current internal to the main PCB board. Over to the left, you will find the battery cable connectors, P3 and P4. The battery connector is polarity sensitive, so you will have to pay attention when installing the batteries. Provisions have been made to make sure that the polarity is properly connected, with the positive terminal being a female connector and the negative terminal being a male connector. Both the master panel and booster panels will not power up on batteries and will need AC in order to turn on the panels. P10 is a RS-232 port that is being held for future use. JW4 is for factory use and is normally open. JW7 can be shorted momentarily if you wish to reset the panel. To the left of JW7 is a bank of troubleshooting LEDs that can be utilized in the field to troubleshoot any issues on the QX Mini Series panel. Moving on, we can see a bank of dip switches, which is where you will set the address of the panel. The master panel will ship as address 1 and should stay that way. Booster panels will ship as address 2, so if you have more than one booster panel, make sure to change the address to any additional booster panels being installed on the particular site. At the bottom left hand of the board, you will see a USB B-style connector, which is where you will connect your computer to program the panel. Remember, the panel can only be programmed through the configuration software. Directly above the dip switches and troubleshooting LEDs, you will see the debug and JTAG connectors. These are strictly for factory use and should not be used. Moving up from there, you will see 3 ribbon cable connectors, P5, P6, and P7. P6 is where the main amplifier, or Quad 30, will be installed on both the master panel and booster panels. P5 is going to be where your secondary amplifier will be installed if your job requires additional amplification. P7 is not currently used and is being held for future use. Please note that the amplifier should not be hot swapped and can cause damage if not powered down before removing or adding an amplifier. The jumper JW6, which is located just above P6, is your watchdog jumper. This jumper is normally closed and should not be removed. Above P5, you will see a smaller ribbon cable connector that is allocated for the QX Mini main display. The connector is keyed, so you do not install the ribbon cable backwards, causing any damage. Finally, the 2 terminals left are the audio and PTT, or push-to-talk inputs, from the microphone connected to the QX Mini master panel. For the QX Mini BP booster panels, the main display ribbon connector and audio and PTT terminals are not used, as there is no user interface on the booster panel. Like the master panel and booster panel that share the same main PCB board, the QX Mini RM remote microphone and QX Mini LOC local operating console also share their own PCB board. Starting on the top left of the board, we have P1, which is used for the main display of the QX Mini LOC. This terminal is not used on the QX Mini RM remote microphone assembly, as there is no display on the remote microphone. Moving down, you will see a rotary switch, SW2, which is used to set the address of both the remote microphone and LOC devices. Please note that you can turn on in the configurator the option to set microphone priority by address, with the lowest address being the highest priority and the microphone connected to the master panel always having the highest priority. Below the rotary switch is the RS45 connectors, power connectors, and audio connectors. Up to 6 remote microphones, or LOCs, or combination of both, are supported by these contacts. Each contact is daisy-chained from one to the next, then back to the QX Mini master panel. At the bottom of the QX Mini RM, or QX Mini LOC PCB board, you will find the connector for the mic wiring. The colors associated to the wiring color are printed on the PCB board for ease of installation. On the top right, you will notice some jumpers, which are factory use only and should not be used. The LEDs on the right side of the board from top to bottom are as follows. AC power. When this LED is lit, you know that both the remote mic or LOC have AC power and are able to function. Under that is the common treble LED. This LED turns on if there are any treble conditions on the QX Mini system. Underneath the common treble, you will see 2 mic status indicators. The top LED indicates that the mic is ready to page. Sometimes there can be a slight delay when pressing down on the mic and when it can transmit your page. When the LED is lit, you are able to talk into the mic. The final LED is a system in use indicator, which lets the person at the mic know that the system is currently in use and you may not be able to use the mic depending on how the priority has been set in the configurator. Now onto the Quad 30 digital amplifier PCB board. At the top of the Quad 30 PCB, you'll see two terminals for output 1 and output 2. These are two speaker outputs that share 30 watts of amplification. The speaker circuit can be wired either as Class A or Class B, depending on what is being required or how the system has been designed. Along the left side of the amplifier is a ribbon cable that will plug into a QX Mini master panel or booster panel. At the bottom left-hand side of the board, you'll notice a bank of dip switches. This is where the address of the amplifier is set. The pre-installed amplifier comes as address 1. Any additional amplifiers purchased will come as address 2. Last but not least, on the Quad 30 amplifier, on the right-hand side of the board, there's a terminal labeled P1. This is for factory use only. Now that we have an understanding of each of the PCB boards that make up a QX Mini system, we can now go through some of the point-to-point wiring and the type of wire used between those points. Let's start with the QX Mini master panel and QX Mini booster panel connections. From the QX Mini master panel, you will take a twisted shielded pair of wires from the RS45 out terminal and run the wires to the first booster panel RS45 in terminal. You will repeat this process from booster to booster for Class B inter-panel connections. If you wish to wire the inter-panel RS45 in Class A, simply run a twisted shielded pair of wires from the RS45 out of the last booster panel back to the master panel RS45 in terminal. Please note that the maximum wiring run from QX Mini master panel to the last QX Mini BP booster panel is 1,000 feet or 305 meters. The inter-panel wiring should be 18 to 22 gauge twisted shielded pair, and you'll want to connect the shield at both ends of the connection. Now let's connect the QX Mini RM remote microphone and QX Mini LOC local operating console to the QX Mini master panel. From the QX Mini master, you'll want to wire a twisted shielded pair from the R-Mic audio to the R-Mic audio in of the remote mic or LOC panel. You will take another pair of twisted shielded wires from the R-Mic RS45 terminal of the master panel and wire them to the RS45 in of the remote mic or LOC. Finally, the remote mics and LOCs will need power, so take a pair of twisted wires, non-shielded, from the aux 24 volt output of the master panel and wire them to the 24 volts in of the remote mic or LOC panel. When installing more than one remote mic or LOC panel, simply follow the ins and outs of each of the connections. On the last remote mic or LOC panel, be sure that the 3.9K end-of-line resistor is installed on the R-Mic audio out and that the 120 ohm resistor is installed on the RS45 out terminals. For the R-Mic audio and R-Mic RS45 connections, make sure that the shield wiring is only connected on the output terminals and do not connect the shield to the R-Mic audio and R-Mic RS45 inputs. As for the wiring between the master panel and each of the remote mics and LOCs, the remote mic audio and the remote mic RS45 will be an 18 to 22 gauge twisted shielded pair with a total wiring length of not more than 1,000 feet or 305 meters. For the power wiring, you will want to use an 18 gauge twisted pair, non-shielded, also with a max distance of 1,000 feet or 305 meters. The relay input on the QX Mini master panel can be programmed to activate output zones and custom messages or tones. The relays are looking for a momentary short and are supervised using a 3.9K end-of-line resistor. Simply connect wires to the relay to the common and normally open contact of a relay connected to a UL or ULC listed fire alarm panel, and make sure to wire in the end-of-line resistor in parallel across the relay contact. You can do the same with relay 2, or if you choose not to use it, you should install the 3.9K end-of-line resistor across the positive and negative terminal of the relay input 2. The sync inputs can be used for two different functions. The first being, it can be used to activate output zones and messages or tones from a UL or ULC listed fire alarm panel, similar to how the relays are activated. You simply wire a NAC circuit from a fire alarm panel to the sync input of the QX Mini, making sure that the polarity is wired correctly. Once the fire alarm is put into alarm, the NAC circuit on the fire alarm switches polarity and activates the sync input on the QX Mini panel, which can be programmed to turn on specific outputs and messages or tones. The second function of a sync input is to receive sync from either a fire alarm panel NAC circuit, an external sync module, the QX Mini master sync output, or a QX Mini BP booster panel sync output. To wire the sync input and outputs, connect the twisted pair from the sync output 1 positive and negative terminal on the QX Mini master panel or booster panel, depending on which panel will be driving the sync. Take those wires to the booster panel and wire into the sync input positive and negative. Be aware that the sync input terminals are slightly different from the rest of the terminals and are laid out as a positive, positive, negative, negative. You will want to wire into the first positive terminal from the left-hand side and the first negative terminal from the left. The other two terminals, you will want to install the supplied 3.9K end-of-line resistor to allow the circuit to be monitored. In order to sync more panels, simply wire the next panel or panels in the same way, in a daisy chain fashion. The SLC or signal line loop connection is a simple in and out wiring. The positive lead of the SLC loop is wired to the leftmost positive terminal of the QX Mini SLC loop connection. The negative lead of the SLC loop is wired to the leftmost negative terminal of the QX Mini SLC loop connection. If there happens to be more devices on the addressable loop, you can wire the SLC loop out of the QX Mini master panel from the rightmost positive and negative terminal. You will also use the rightmost terminals if you were returning the SLC loop back to the Americom fire alarm panel in a Class A scenario. Now onto the onboard NAC circuits. If you are familiar with our fire alarm panels, you will want to wire the QX Mini onboard NAC circuits the same way. The NAC circuits can be wired in either Class A or Class B. For Class B wiring, you will want to connect the positive lead to the leftmost positive terminal, and for the negative connection, you will want to wire to the rightmost negative terminal. At the end of the circuit, you will have to install the 3.9K end-of-line resistor in order to monitor the NAC circuit for any opens or shorts. If you wish to wire your NAC circuits in a Class A fashion, your out wiring will be connected to the leftmost positive terminal and the rightmost negative terminal. The return wiring will be terminated to the middle two positive and negative terminals, and there will be no need for an end-of-line resistor. The number of devices and wiring length will have to be calculated to assure that you are using the correct wiring gauge. Last but not least, there are the common alarm, AC treble, and treble contact. All three of these contacts can be wired in either normally open or normally closed. The contacts are rated for 30 volts direct current at 1 amp resistive load. When using this type of interface between a listed fire alarm panel and the QX Mini, the maximum distance between the fire alarm panel and QX Mini should not exceed 20 feet, and the wiring should also be in conduit. Wiring of amp circuits are as follows. For Class B speaker circuits, you'll want to connect the wires to the B positive terminal and the B negative terminal. At the end of the circuit, you will want to install the 22K end-of-line resistor. For Class A speaker wiring, you will wire out from the B positive and B negative terminal. Once you reach the last speaker, you will return the wires back to the A positive and A negative terminals on the amplifier output. The speaker wiring should be a non-shielded pair of wires with the number of speakers, the wiring length, and size determined by calculating the draw of the circuit. Each Quad 30 is rated for 30 watts, which is shared between the two outputs on the digital amplifier. Thank you for taking the second of 3 online training modules for the QX Mini. Please proceed to the Module 2 test. Once you have achieved an 80% or greater, you can move on to the third and final training module, which will take you through the MGC ECS configuration software and programming. Once you have finished all 3 modules, the MGC ECS configurator software will become available for download.